We have here the most important linear equation that there is, the slope-intercept equation. On the back of your toolkit, I'd like you to make this equation and put these labels on it. So in these equations, the letter x will stay the letter x. This is the input. It's our independent variable. It then goes through a transformation to become an output, the dependent variable. That's the letter y, which in the equation will stay as the letter y. The m is usually going to have a number in its place. So right here with the x will be a number. That number is the slope, which is the line's rate of change. And on the back, we add on the y-intercept. That is the point on the y-axis where your line crosses. That is a way to think of a starting point for the line. You start from there, and then you move out from it. On your toolkit, I would fill in the slope-intercept equation. It is y equals mx plus b. And then here are 4 examples. Now, those 4 examples are graphed down here. One of them is the thin line. One is the dashed line. One is this very steep dotted line. And then one is this thick line. Do a quick pause. I want you to see if you can guess which is which. Then unpause when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, here we go with the check. Looking at the lines, I like to first do the slopes. Take a look at what's positive and what's negative. Remember, positively sloped lines will go up as you look at them across, and then negatively sloped lines will go down. So the thick line and the dashed line are going to be the 2 lines that have the negative slopes. So one is the green one is the red one. To determine which is which, let's look at where these lines cross the y-axis. This thick line here crosses the y-axis at a height of about -1, 2, so not quite -3. As I look at the 2 y-intercepts, -2.7, that's about the height I'm looking for. So sure enough, this thick line is the red equation. For the dashed line, that crosses the y-axis at a height of 1, 2, 3, about 3.5. Take a look at this, the y-intercept at 3.6. That's our starting point, the height at which the line crosses this y-axis. So we looked at the sign of the slope to determine which lines were going down, and then used the y-intercept to decide which was which. Do the same thing now with these other 2. So y equals 2/3 x minus 1 and y equals 8x. Those are both positive slopes. So it's the thin line that goes up and the dotted line that goes up. The intercept for the blue line, or the blue equation rather, should be at a height of -1. That's right here. So that's going to be the thin line. Now for the 8x, notice how there's no y-intercept written on the back. That means really there's a little imaginary plus 0. So this purple line should cross the y-axis at a height of 0, which the dotted line does. Another way you can tell the difference, 8 is a very large slope. That means the line should be very steep. Whereas 2/3 is a smaller number. That should be a line that is less steep. There are 2 special cases I want you to be aware of. One is where y equals a number. So let's imagine y equals 2. If we look at points that would be on this line, the y value always has to be the number 2. That's what the equation tells me. Y is 2 all the time. The x value, because there's no x in this equation, could be anything. So let's put in some negatives, maybe a 0, and then some positives. Plot these points and see what happens. So -5, 2 would be right here. -1, 2 would be here. 0, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2. I hope that I can convince you that if we would plot all of the points where y equals 2, it's going to be a horizontal line at a height of 2. This is what y equals 2 looks like. It's not tilted. It's straight across because your y value, the height, has to be the same for all your points. What if we do a similar thing but with the x's? What if now it's the x coordinate that has to be the same? Because there's no y in the equation, y can be whatever we want. Let's pick some negatives, maybe a 0 and then some positives, and see what happens. So for 3, -4, that's going to be right down here. 3, -2, 3, 0, 3, 1, 3, 5. I hope I can convince you that these points are all going to be right on top of each other. If x has to be a particular number, then your line can't move left or right. It can move only up and down, and you end up with this vertical line. So the previous ones we looked at, the ones that are tilted, have the letter y and the letter x showing up. If you've got one that's straight across, it's going to have the letter y only. And if you have one that's straight up and down, it's going to have the letter x only. In your toolkit, let's fill in. If it's x equals a number, that's what gives you this vertical line. So x equals -1 would look like that. If it's y equals a number, like y equals 2, you're going to get a straight horizontal line, like the one that we have drawn here. Okay, what you're going to be expected to do is to take a graph that already exists and find the equation of the line that made it. The way I'd like you to do this is to start with your slope-intercept equation, y equals mx plus b. We're then going to put numbers in for the m and in for the b. To get your slope, do as we did in the last unit. Pick 2 points on the line and create a slope triangle between them. So for this particular one, I'm going down 6 spots, and I'm going to the right 3 spots. So for my slope, how much did I go down divided by how much did I go to the right? That's going to end up being the number -2. So my equation is going to have y equals, so the letter y, I'll switch back to black for this. The letter y equals, and where the m is, that's where we put this slope number. Now on the back, the plus b, we're going to look where our line crosses the y-axis, at what height. This is at a height of -1, 2, 3, -3. So put a -3 right there on the back. And there it is. It really can be fairly straightforward. Calculate your slope like we did in the last unit, and to get your y-intercept, look at where that crosses the line. I do want to show you a way to check your answer on the Desmos graphing calculator. So online, it's just desmos.com/calculator. It does a great job of graphing whatever you tell it to. So if I put in the equation I think we should have, I should see a line that looks like the line we started with. So y equals -2x minus 3 crosses the y-axis at a height of -3. And then as we look at it, it's got a slope that goes right 1, down 2, right 1, down 2. Back to our original problem. That is, whoops, that's not the one. This is the one. That's exactly what we had. Right 1, down 2, right 1, down 2, crosses at -3. So we know we did good. Make sure your line is tilted. It's got to have the letter y and the letter x. Don't forget that letter x. And do a check when you're finished. I'm looking at that line go down. That means my slope should be negative. If I got a positive number on accident, that means I made a mistake. For these, I would like you to write these equations, doing the method we just did. Do a quick pause and unpause when you're ready to check them. For the first one, I'm going to start with y equals mx plus b. For the slope, I'm going to pick 2 points. So here's a nice one. I'm looking for another place where we cross the axis. That looks good too. For my slope, I go up 1, 2, 3, 4 spots, and to the right, 1, 2, 3 spots. So my slope is the change in y number divided by the change in x number, so 4/3. For the y-intercept, where do we cross the y-axis? At what height? Well, it's at a height of 1, 2, 3. So the b that I'll use is a plus 3. The equation should look like this. Y equals 4/3 x plus 3. Next up, notice that this one is different. This is not an angled line. This line is going straight up and down. Straight up and down is one of those special cases. This is x equals a number, just the letter x, no letter y this time. Which number? Well, take a look where your x crosses the x-axis. That occurs at -3, so the number I want is -3. I'm going to do a quick check just on my Desmos graphing calculator. If I type in x equals -3, I should see a straight vertical line that crosses the x-axis at -3, which it does. That's an indication that we have done the right thing. So make sure you have your toolkit filled out. You're now prepped to do number 1 through 10 in the practice packet.